Welcome to Mighty Married Moms. Join us at our kitchen table twice a week as the Mighty Married Moms, Debbie, Linda, Wendy, invite spectacular guests to weigh in on staying sexy, vibrant, and healthy, building marriages with soul-satisfying connection, raising happy, healthy, successful kids. Conversations with Mighty Married Moms will bring you closer to the life you really want. Episode 42.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mighty Married Moms, our Thursday edition. And we've just had a really great conversation with Reverend Dr. Garrett Smith, who is an author of a book called Comfortably Jewish, Practical Ways to Enjoy Your Family Heritage. And I got to say, it went way beyond the conversation of Jewish versus some other cultural marriage. It was more like intercultural stuff happened all the time between, Midwestern versus New Englanders or whatever. And I got to tell you, I didn't say it when we were talking, but it made me laugh. I was like, oh yeah, I'm a born and raised New Englander, and if anybody brings a Jell-O salad to my table at one of the holidays, big problems. Big problems. I can't even abide a Jell-O salad. So isn't that so funny? So
You haven't had my grandmother's Jell-O salad.
Oh, now here we go. Maybe I haven't. But those kind of cultural
one made
things.
out of seaweed.
No, I haven't had that either, Linda. I hope you can come to us.
Hampton, it's called, and it's actually very good. You would never know in a million years it was made out of seaweed.
Really?
Great.
Yeah.
Isn't
Anyway,
isn't that so funny?
I digress.
But we don't. It's just kind of very, very interesting. Like, oh, that can't happen. That just can't happen. Like, there's a cultural difference in my house. I don't buy paper products. I don't buy paper towels. I don't buy paper napkins. I don't buy paper products. And toilet paper.
Some, yeah.
Toilet paper I do buy. Yeah, just to be clear. Yeah. But it drives my husband absolutely crazy. But I just use cloth, and I have a rag bag that I wash the cloth, and this is what my mom did.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But it drives. So there's so many things those are really silly. Jell-O salad and rag bags are kind of silly, but there can be some really can bring some real tension into the home. And I really like the way he pulled out the fact that at some point, usually having children will bring out something inside of you that says, we have to do it this way, and you're not even sure why.
You're not sure why. It is a lot of subconscious stuff.
Isn't that interesting?
And just because you've always done it that way.
Right.
Story here. The big thing that my husband and I had to deal with on Christmas was, and I mentioned it in passing in the previous episode, is, does Santa Claus wrap the presents or does Santa Claus not wrap the presents?
Oh, boy.
I can't imagine coming down in the morning and seeing a pile of toys or a pile of gifts and letting the kids just go at it. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me, and yet that's what he did. And so I said, that's fine. I'm happy to wrap every single present for Christmas, and I did that for years.
Wow.
I did that for years because it was important to me.
Right.
And it wasn't important to him, so that was our compromise. I did it, and he let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think Christmas in general is an interesting holiday, right? I mean, sort of, you think of it in the origins of Christianity, but clearly Santa Claus has kind of taken over the holiday in many, many ways, really.
Yes.
Which, I think it's a wonderful celebration of giving. I think it's great. I think it can get out of control, but that's not the point of our podcast today. But that culturally, it is really, and a lot of Jewish people have Christmas trees or
they do.
put the presents down, because Santa Claus doesn't have to be associated with religion, which is actually a nice thing. It's a nice thing that there's some holiday where everyone's giving gifts to each other, and it doesn't have to be. It's a cultural thing. It's not a religious
not a
thing.
faith-based thing.
Yeah, not a faith-based thing. Yeah.
But Garrett's experience with couples, no matter what, if it's religious differences or faith-based differences or cultural, but it was interesting that he said, I really liked his example toward the end when he was talking about people from Eastern countries, Asian countries, our unity and family unity is the most important thing. Individuality is not important. So when somebody walks in the house and there's a broken vase on the floor, an American will say, "Who broke the vase?"
Right.
We throw each other under the bus. Whereas in an Asian culture, they say, "Oh, a vase has been broken. Let's clean it up." And it's not about who did it. It's like there's this face-saving thing. And the spin that Garrett talked about was that an American or somebody from a Western culture might say, "You're just lying. You're just covering up the bad deed." No, it's just a very different value system. And it's just interesting that those value systems, like you say, can rise up. And we're talking maybe about silly things with Santa and Christmas presents wrapped or unwrapped or whatever. But there are some really deep-seated things that can come through.
Absolutely.
That can come
I
through.
think his point about rites of passage, that's where the deep-seated things come through. Whether when it comes to marriages, weddings, especially.
Yeah.
We didn't get into it, but I'm sure funerals. There's a lot that you can talk about, the differences, the way different cultures as well as religions practice their funerals. You look at Dixie. What was it? When somebody would die, they'd go down the street and they'd be playing a big, the Dixieland band.
New Orleans.
New Orleans.
In
That's
Orleans.
it. Thank you. And that's just not what we do here in New England. So, so there are different. It's the rites of passage that really pull out what our self-identity is, and I loved the whole conversation about identity.
Right.
That was really important.
Where it comes from, and so much of it is kind of embedded and ingrained, and we're not even really conscious of it. And the transition that he spoke about in terms of the year 2015 and the recent past, that people are forming their identity in very different sort of ways, as opposed to growing up in third generation in a small village in Romania. Like, this is what we do, this is how we dress, this is what we eat, I'll probably marry you, that kind of a thing. That's like, it's just easy, like, I'm from whatever village in Romania and this is who I am. But now in our multicultural U.S. based culture, our kids, we grab onto, our identity comes from kind of more, I would say, superficial, is that a right word? Or
I don't think it's necessarily superficial. Some pieces of it might be, but I think that we're talking about some of the things that are really important, and that actually goes to the 5 areas that he talked about: identity, communal decisions, home, extended family, and transcendent. And I think that none of those are superficial.
No.
There are other things that are, but those are the core issues of where families can try to come to some sort of agreement and often have to work through them.
And I was just going to say, you were saying it's definitely part of the U.S. culture, because U.S. culture is the melting pot. But I also think it's a global culture now, because we are connected by the internet, so we're getting influence from everywhere. A lot of beautiful traditions and rites of passage. And I've always felt disappointed that culturally in the United States we don't have very many rites of passage.
We don't.
We really only have if you're Jewish, you've got that wonderful bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, but you've got the wedding and you've got death. And then otherwise,
and graduations,
and graduations, and I guess Christmas and birthdays. They're not really a rite of passage. Graduation's a rite of passage.
Sure.
Marriage, the death. So I like the idea of having those and creating those.
Right.
Oh, and the obviously the baptism, right? So I know that for a lot of people, baptism is important. It is a rite of passage for your
and
baby.
it's a different age.
Whether you, as he pointed out,
go to church every week, or
you're not even really invested in a faith, religious, sort of regular practice.
It's not part of your life,
but it's something that we all grew up. I was
Everybody
baptized,
does it.
and so
and you have a party. You have it's sort of like welcoming the child into the family. It can be
in some, and this goes into even different Protestant religions or any Christian religions really. Some of them are baby baptisms, and some of them are later on, as a young adult or even as an adult baptisms. And so that's a traditional thing too, and depends on what your communal background is for that.
I just really appreciated the fact that he was able, his experience really elucidated this and helped couples who were coming with some sort of conflict or agita about all this, coming to him, and he was able to kind of come up with this model of let's rise above this and think about, let's be very conscious and purposeful. Like we like to talk about living on purpose rather than just like living or sliding into things. Is naming your identity. How do you identify yourself in this couple or this family? And what are your communal decisions? I really like that distinction between what's the community that we're going to identify with versus what's the faith tradition that we might identify with, because it might not a faith matter might not be what's important to you, but just to say we're a family that loves to hang around with other young families, and we like to eat, make sure that we all get together and have a big meal together once a month, and at every holiday we make sure that we get together and the kids are all screaming, like to make it intentional, like, yeah, that's who we are, that's what we do, that's what our community is. And then the home traditions. What did he say? He called it the December Dilemma.
December Dilemma.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't that a good idea?
Love it.
To bring to anybody, what's December look like to you? What do you hold of high value, and why? Like, we have to have turkey at on December 25th. Well, why? Is it about because your dead grandmother always made them, and if you don't have a turkey, you're going to miss her all the more? Good reason, or whatever it might be, or. I guess you don't have to have turkey. I guess you could have some other meal. We could go vegetarian. I could live with that. Mm-hmm. Just to be conscious of it, to live on purpose. Mm-hmm. And then how are you going to work with extended family relationships? And I thought it was really key what he said. If you're in a mixed faith-based tradition, you decide we're going to kind of raise the children to be Jewish. How do my Protestant parents-in-law get folded into that? How can we stay connected and enjoy one another if their grandchildren are being raised very differently from the way they were raised or what they would have hoped that we would have raised our children? How do you so to make that more conscious? Like, well, let's find a way to bridge that, and then what we really believe about God. Or not, do we pray? Do we not pray? Something about transcendence.
What does it look like?
And that rites of passage that Linda's been speaking to. So just those 5 points, I think, are really, really key. And I know I'm going to sit down and talk with Jeff about it, because you may know that I'm a stepmom. And I got to tell you, the December Dilemma was very interesting. As a stepmother, 1 Christmas holiday, 2 Christmas holidays.
It's complicated.
I married my husband. My boys were 4 and 6. You can't just say, have Christmas at your own house, and your father and I will have Christmas at our own house, and then we'll just come and look at the presents that my husband wanted to, make something out of Christmas with his children, of course. So how do you do that without spoiling them? That's Wendy's value system. We don't want to spoil them, whatever that might mean. So those cultural traditions can come through. And actually, I was the only Protestant in the group. All the other players were Catholic. But nonetheless, so there's a lot in there. So the December Dilemma, I wonder if that's in his book. I should have asked him.
Yeah. I also, that's definitely that's a great marker as far as, he talked about how he works with couples. Like that sort of, let's think beyond this, because they don't really think about it. You're dating and you don't really think about that we might be from 2 different, very cultural backgrounds. Maybe we think we're 2 different religions and we don't really go to church or the synagogue, so we don't really care. But then when you get married, suddenly, and I found that I always used to joke that marriage is like this entity outside of us, the couple who are getting married. It's like this force, Everyone's got opinions about it.
Sure.
And
the wedding day?
And the wedding day, I had some aunts who wouldn't speak to me because we had strawberry shortcake for dessert and we didn't have a wedding cake.
Oh, my goodness.
And they were so upset about it.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. So this is one of those mountain versus molehill things, right?
I know. And I was like, really?
Really?
Oh my gosh, I never thought that might be important to somebody. Like, it never occurred to me that someone might feel strongly that I should have a wedding cake and cut the cake and stuff it in each other's face and, the whole thing. And so,
isn't that interesting? Wow. Yeah. Okay. So there's a case in point about a cultural difference. But I would say, it was your wedding to your husband, and you guys get to decide.
We get to decide, right? But not everybody feels that way. So, and just the attachment, as Garrett talked about, that real attachment to cultural traditions that you may or may not be conscious of why they're important.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right. If you're forgetting the big picture, which is it's the couple who's getting married and they're making their decisions, you're really kind of stuck in that.
And so I think the other thing to ask ourselves, whether you're a young couple that's just starting out on this process or even a further along couple like the 3 of us, one of the things to ask yourself is as you're creating, as you look at the traditions that you have as a family, it's important to ask yourself, as Garrett explained to us, why is this important?
Yeah,
and I think that's the big picture question. If I've got this tradition, what do I want my kids to get out of it? What do I want to get out of it? What do I want our family to get out of it? Because that's what traditions are really supposed to be for. And when I teach families about traditions, which is a huge part of being a close-knit family, I ask them that. I say, what are the traditions that are important to you, and what are you hoping to get out of it?
Right.
And that's the question that every couple needs to ask themselves. And
Sure.
if your kids are old enough, I say involve your kids in that discussion. What do they want to get out of it?
Right.
Let them have a say, and maybe it's time to create some new traditions.
Yeah.
You know, maybe
Right.
they're ready for a new way to do Christmas morning. Maybe they're ready to have, this monthly family event, whatever that might be. Maybe they're ready for a new way to do summer vacations every year.
Right.
Whatever those traditions are, the point of traditions is to pull us together as a family for
Right.
support, so we know we have each other
Right.
through thick and thin,
Exactly.
no matter what,
Exactly.
because friends come and go.
Right.
Most of
You
them.
want to be able to say, that's what we do.
Yeah.
That's what we do in my family, and it's really important to us. And that's got some very deep-seated physiological.
That's what we do. That's
What's
the way
what's
we
the
do
right
it.
word? It's more than social heritage. It's sort of like survival of the fittest. Like,
Yeah.
I need to know that I belong to this group,
Yes.
and that they have my back.
You're my tribe.
Yeah, my tribe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think starting off with, like he said, what is my identity? And then thinking about Bill Crawford, who we talked to also, and what's your highest purpose? Your real identity is what kind of person do you want to be, what kind of person you want, and how do these traditions fit into what is that identity, and what's the
Yeah.
higher purpose, right? So
Yeah.
why are we doing this, and how does it make us feel connected as a tribe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for pulling Bill Crawford back into this, because I think that's really important.
Right.
The highest purpose.
Right,
Yes.
right. We've just gotten some really good stuff recently, and I hope that you tune in and look up the Bill Crawford
We'll
episode.
put a
I think
link
it's
to
number
it.
21 and number
It is.
22.
Yeah, we'll put a link to it.
Yep, and because he does talk about, again, living on purpose and kind of pulling ourselves up and out and taking a second look and saying, what are the 4 questions? You may remember them, or actually we added a 5th, didn't we? Is this really what I want to be doing? Do I really want to be reacting this way to some unpleasant news?
Did I choose it?
Did I choose it? And if I am agitated about it, how's that working for you? And there are a couple of other questions, but again, with this model of kind of pulling yourselves up and out and saying what's really important in terms of family traditions and family identity. And I also really like what he said, his analogy. Garrett. What Garrett said, the analogy of. He can play guitar well enough to plunk it around, but it's really valuable to him to be able to go into a music store and have a little bit of an understanding. So even though his children are not being raised 100% Jewish, in a 100% Jewish culture and environment, he's not being, a Hasidic Jew in the middle of a neighborhood in New York City, where it's only delis and food and people around that look just like him. He lives in a mixed cultural world, and it's really important for him to say, these are things that are important, but I want you to be able to connect the dots and be, what do you call a cultural translator?
Yeah.
Right.
Which
That
is
all of us should be able to value one of the things that everybody brings to the table, literally, and brings to the conversation. And I thought that was a really important piece, is that we want, again, to live on purpose and raising our kids to be cultural translators. Like, this is really cool, this is valuable, this is important in our family, and I hope that you bring it forth into your family. But what are they doing over there, that family from the Midwest or that family from China? Let's unpack what's important in their family.
Oh, and wouldn't that really begin to open doors globally? My family did AFS for several times, actually.
What's AFS?
American Field Service, I think is what it stands for. But that's where we had foreign exchange student living with my family for an entire year.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
we did that too.
Yeah, we did that 3 times. And the whole purpose of that is to open young people's minds to what it means to be living in a different culture. And, as the melting pot, we've got a great opportunity to bring that to our kids.
Right. Yeah, he had a lot to say, and he's a great guy. And if you're in the Massachusetts area, I highly recommend if you want to unpack some stuff about your family to look Garrett up. But
And the fact that he grew up Jewish, married a Mormon. His wife was Mormon.
No,
and
his
then-
mother, it was his parents.
Yeah,
Yeah,
his
yeah, yeah.
parents. Oh, right. His mother and father were Mormon and Jewish.
Yeah.
And then he ended up identifying from a spiritual base or faith base more with Christianity.
yeah, I know, right?
After having gone through Buddhism a little bit too.
Yes, yes. And he married a woman from Namibia, South Africa, who's got a very interesting background herself, and she's born and raised Jewish, and her grandmother became a believer in Jesus when she was young, and her mother, and she looked at her grandma like, what? And then before she left high school, she decided that made good sense too. But
Wow.
And they met in New York City. Garrett and Nikki met in New York City. I'm telling their whole story. And so he's whatever. I think he's from San Francisco, and he's marrying somebody from South Africa. So you can imagine the family vacations they have to take.
Yeah.
They have to save up for years to take a family of 5 to South Africa. Really,
To South Africa,
they
that's
do,
true.
or to fly her mother up to visit. You know, it's not a big, it's not a small thing. You know, but that's the value system that they have. So anyway, but we digress. But we just wanted to thank Garrett and hope that you'll look him up. We're going to have resources at the bottom of the show notes today. And we want to just, again, say thank you for joining us at Mighty Married Moms. And if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about, we'd love to hear about
Definitely.
it. Please comment and make sure that you subscribe on iTunes to Mighty Married Moms. And we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Mighty Married Moms. Tune in twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays to meet fascinating and inspiring guests who will help you create the life you've always wanted.
You can find these episodes and special gifts just for you at mightymarriedmoms.com, as well as a link to our Facebook community,
where we continue the conversation around the kitchen table. Please also help share the love by leaving a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.